The Ducks will line it up from the gun as he gets the snap. He's got pressure coming from the inside. He spins out, zips it to the sideline. It's picked! It's picked, and that's Sonny Styles. Sonny Styles to the 40. Sonny's going to go. The 20, the 10. Sonny Styles, pick six, 64 yards as he spins into the end zone, and the Buckeyes score. Jack Sawyer down to celebrate with him and jump awkwardly in the end zone. Touchdown, Buckeyes.
Hey, it's Chuck.
And Emeka Ibuka, your deep man, back as he will field this one at the 40, fields it cleanly, and he makes the first man miss. He's got a crease. Emeka up the sideline. He's got the punter to beat. Emeka's going to go, and the long-awaited drought is over. Touchdown, Buckeyes. 10-year drought of a punt return for a touchdown is over. Emeka Ibuka takes it to the house. And Howard will take it from the gun, from the 30-yard line for the Buckeyes, and he has got a crossing route from Emeka. Emeka's got the ball, and he's the 50. Emeka makes a sweet spin move, and he makes the man miss. Emeka to the 30. He's got one man to beat. Can Emeka make it in? Touchdown, Buckeyes! Emeka Ibuka with some shifty moves, bud.
Let's get it.
And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback.
The truth is, Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those.
You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country.
And welcome to Chuck on Bucks on a beautiful Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me. I took the day off yesterday. I had a busy couple of days, and it's not because I was playing the video game, though I did check it out. But you guys, I think, were playing the video game because they give us excellent analytics on this side of YouTube. And it basically tells you what your last 10 videos did and how your new video is doing in relation to those. So at 5 hours in, it tells you how the other ones were doing at 5 hours in and how you relate. My Monday video was at number 1 until 4 p.m. 4 p.m. is when the video came out, and I paid close attention because I wanted to see if it would have any effect. And it dropped off the face of the earth. That number 1 video dropped to number 10, which tells me a lot of you guys were playing that game. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. I've got plenty. I was only allowed to play 3 plays. I bought my 2 younger sons, 20 and 17, a copy, one for their Xbox, one for their PlayStation, and I sprung for the early release. So they had it, and I watched a lot, but I only got to play 3 plays, 2 incompletions, and a run stuffed for -1 yard. I'm not a big video game player, but the experience in watching that thing was incredible. And even if you don't like video games, watch some of those clips, because I'll be honest, it really gives you a feel of what these Buckeyes are going to look like. We got some new additions. We got some changes. It was so cool, man. And I got to tell you, Will Howard, I know there's been a lot of doubts about Will. Willard looks fantastic. All right. The dude is legit. He's the perfect quarterback for the season of dreams. And I know this because I saw him put up like 500 yards passing and I don't know, like 7 touchdowns with my son. So it's on, guys. It's totally on. Quinshon Judkins, the best running back in the game. JJ Smith feels so big out there. By the way, JJ, I got one of our Oregon listeners. Now this dude, sharp guy. I want to read what he sent to me. So this was after I put those video boards. Remember the video boards? So we had the video boards that I took pictures of when I was down at the Woody. And you can see here on the broad jump, J.J. Smith with a 10.9 max velocity. J.J. Smith down at the bottom, 22.3 miles an hour. Vertical jump, J.J. at 35.5 inches. Now here's what he had to say when he saw that. And again, this is a sharp dude. Very knowledgeable about Oregon football, really stays in the loop. Crazy that Emeka has a bigger vertical leap and a faster 10-yard dash than the guy everyone is saying is a freak physically and, quote, different. Talking about J.J. Smith. Makes you wonder about the crazy hype. Heard some crazy hype last year with Carnell Tate being the best freshman Ryan Day has had from inside the Woody, and he barely did anything. I'm seeing a pattern. I somewhat understand where he's coming from with the JJ stuff, right? Tough to believe. I get it. I do take a little issue with the Carnell Tate stuff there. Like Carnell Tate, the hype about Carnell was he's going to be that next dude, that next first round Ohio State wide receiver in that unprecedented run of first rounders coming out under Brian Hartline. And I don't know what was expected from Carnell Tate his freshman year, in a wide receiver room with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming pretty much cementing that starting role. Hartline doesn't play freshman. And Carnell Tate caught at least one ball in 11 different games. That's pretty doggone good for a freshman at Ohio State. And he showed me in his freshman year that he is every bit that dude he was hyped to be. No disappointment around here whatsoever. I think most Buckeyes agree with that. In fact, before we realized that JJ was going to be a starting caliber guy his freshman year, I think most of us were quite comfortable with the leap that we felt Carnell was going to take this year in being that kind of number 2 stud dude with Emeka. Brian Hartline trusts Emeka and Carnell Tate to line up at any spot. And that's huge praise coming from Brian Hartline. And it tells us a bit about what's going on behind the scenes with Carnell Tate. So definitely lived up to my expectations. What his numbers are going to be like this upcoming season, I don't know. I think the offense is going to be quite a bit different. And I don't know if we're going to be able to expect wide receivers in this offense to put up the kind of numbers that the Olaves and Jacksons and Marvins put up. We're still waiting to see what this is going to look like. So when it comes to Carnell, I just think that maybe on a national level, you guys aren't aware. Yeah, he had a great freshman year. Let's watch a couple plays.
Carnell Tate for a first down. Picks up 15.
Little RPO. The offensive line is blocking run. Henderson has already shown that he's effective today. So the line's blocking run. Kyle McCord's reading the linebackers. They come in to stop the run. It opens up that.
On second down at 11. McCord, middle of the field. Pass is complete, and Teray just left. McCord looking to throw. Throws to his right. Pass is complete to his right. Max Melton missed the tackle.
He caught it and turned it into a 65-yard gain.
McCord, another one. Carnell Tate, the freshman. First down, stays on his feet.
Burn any eligibility.
Pioneer that.
Great throw. In stride. That's caught by Carnell Tate. Number 17 could be one of the best to ever come out of Ohio State.
Just the next in line, right? I mean, it is an
a scrapper, he's a runner, and he's a competitor.
Devin Brown sets up to fire. He does near side, and that's the freshman lad. Second down and 7. Play fake for Brown. A punt and a go. Down the sideline. Tate.
McCord looking over the middle. And Tate scoops that one up. Carnell Tate, the freshman wide receiver, gains 15.
I tell you, this is an incredible catch because the coverage was excellent from Hardy. Look at him extend.
It's a lot of big shoes for Kyle McCord to fill.
Here he is on play action. A dart over the middle.
Buckeyes great on third down. 6-4-7 as McCord backpedals, fires for Tate. Tate has it. Tate breaks tackles and make it 7 for 8.
Really got him fired up.
Maybe I spoke too soon. Certainly a little animated there as McCord drops to throw. Tate running free. Tate across the 20 and thrown down at the 40.
Now, about JJ, comparing the JJ hype to the Carnell Tate hype is kind of absurd, right? Ohio State didn't even create the JJ hype. In fact, most people around the Ohio State program when JJ first arrived tried to stamp it down. There is absolutely no comparison to the Carnell Tate hype and the JJ hype. But I can almost understand someone from outside Ohio State who's an opponent of Ohio State pointing this out and saying, look, JJ's not all that. Look at his numbers. He's not different. He's just another really good wide receiver. Another one in a long line of really good Ohio State wide receivers, like this guy did here. I get it. And when we look at those categories, the broad jump, 10.8, the max speed, 22 miles an hour, the vertical jump, 35.5 inches. Those are all excellent numbers. But that's not what makes JJ great. What makes JJ great is not the fact that he can jump high.
What makes me me is not the fact that I can jump high.
What makes JJ great is not the fact that he can run fast.
Not the fact that I can run fast.
What makes JJ great is not the highlights.
It's not the highlights,
Oh my goodness, Jeremiah Smith.
but I do like the highlights. I've been who I am before all that. My family made me. Miami Garden Ravens made me. Boy, those hills Coach Rob Mack made us run, those made me. Shamanah made me. Coach Jones made me. My team, my love for the game made me. My love for the game made me. And I just got to pay it forward. That's JJ.
What makes him great is his body control, his ability to high point the ball, his huge hands, his eye discipline when the ball's in the air, his work ethic. Brian Hartline said, I love the way he lives. He makes a mistake. He asks why. He corrects it like a veteran. Because all this dude does is football, man. He's a shy kid. Listen to him there. I mean, he's shy. This is all he does. He just wants to be a baller. He wants to be great. He's got all the tools to do it, and he works at his craft like a vet. I've never seen a guy in all the years I've followed Ohio State football make grown men throw their hands up so much in disbelief. Opponents on the team, Denzel Burke, a prideful guy, just throw his hands up. Like, yeah, man, it is what it is. He's going to beat me. How about the best guy on those boards we're talking about right there? Lorenzo Styles, who tied with Reese Stocksdale for the best overall score on those boards. Lorenzo Styles, sick athlete, half the size of JJ Smith. Lorenzo was probably playing 10 yards off the line. And JJ ran off the line, hit him with a left, right, left that turned Lorenzo Styles all the way around. And JJ beat him to the end zone by 15 yards. And again, we're talking about a sick athlete in Lorenzo Styles. We're not talking physically dominated him. We're talking straight up outcrafted him. He's the best at everything. He's not just the best at these sick catches. Like, we see guys like that. Not quite to his level, but we see guys that make these ridiculous catches. But they're all lacking something, or they're not quite as good at something. He walked in out of high school to the Ohio State wide receiver room, and he's the best at everything. And I totally understand folks from outside the Ohio State program having a hard time believing any of this, because it really is just that hard to wrap your mind around, and it took me a while. I can't stand the latest, greatest hype from players. Rarely lives up to it. Certainly hardly ever lives up to it in a freshman season. I can't stand it, really. And to be honest, I'm starting to get a little worn on the David Sanders discussion. Like, it's just been so long and become so important. Football is a team game, and no one guy makes or breaks an operation. And it's just like wearing on me a bit. So I've tried not to talk about it much. But this dude, it is different. And I would feel exactly the same way as this gentleman feels. I'm skeptical by nature. But if this guy played for Alabama or he played for Oregon and we were hearing all this, I'd be very skeptical too. But we've seen this really weird shift around the program from people that are close to the program, in this assuredness of what this is going to be that I don't think we've seen since Orlando Pace. If you're from a different market, if you follow Alabama, if you follow Oregon, the Ohio State media machine is very old school and stodgy. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to freshman players, they intentionally stamp down the hype because they're very old school. They just are. And they want to make sure that those freshmen do not have any undue pressure on them. Even these guys, these types, have thrown their hands up and said, essentially, this kid is just too darn good. You're on your own, buddy. We can't help you here. And they've totally fanboyed out. And it's just hard to get your mind around, man. We've only seen a handful of guys like this in our lives as football fans. There's only been one Randy. There's only been one Calvin Johnson. Before them, there were none of them. So looking at them coming out of high school was a bit different. You couldn't point to that guy and said, maybe this guy is going to be one of those type of dudes, because they were the first. They were 101. The only guy we've ever seen come out of high school at wide receiver with this kind of hype was Julio Jones. Julio Jones was a guaranteed, cannot miss Absolute first rounder, potential Hall of Famer coming out of high school. Like, you could see it all. And of course, Julio Jones lived up to almost all the hype. But he's the last one that came out of high school with this kind of hype and this kind of cannot miss type of projection. I think the most telling thing when it comes to J.J. Smith, aside from the little bits and pieces we've seen come out of practice, is the head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes, a guy that currently has 15 5-stars on his roster, who's seen ridiculous first-round talent at wide receiver come through his program. In the spring game on the sidelines, talking to Fox, had a little fanboy moment of his own when he turned and said, watch this, before a play, talking about JJ. That was different. That was strange. And the commenter from Oregon here points out that JJ did not have a fantastic spring game. No, he didn't. I don't know how many targets he had, but I think drawing any conclusions from spring practice number 12, which is what the spring game is kind of silly. And the only conclusions I ever draw out of those is so-and-so looks physically good. He's moving well. He's put on weight. That's it. But after Ryan Day made that comment, the watch this, he said something that was even more telling than that. I got to get him out of here soon. And it came out of his mouth as if he was talking about Justin Fields being backed up by Chris Chuganoff and wanting to make sure he didn't put him in any danger because he's that valuable to the team. He was bubble wrapping in a spring game, the freshman wide receiver. That was the most telling thing we've seen. Of all the stuff around the program, that right there, that's something you don't see out of a coach. We've watched him at press conferences try to suppress his words, and he's almost unable to do it when he's talking about Jeremiah Smith. Now, I hate it when another team, like an Alabama, like an Oregon, like a Georgia, has a player that is so much better than the guys I got at that position on my team. I hate it. And I don't want to believe it. So I get where this dude's coming from. But I would encourage the other fan bases who are watching now, and we've seen a big influx of Alabama fans recently. So they break down the top 50 cities that are watching the shows, right, on YouTube. Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, always the top 3. Detroit, always the top 4. They're watching us. They sure are. All of a sudden, on that list, Atlanta, Georgia, Portland, Oregon, Eugene, Oregon, Birmingham, Decatur, Alabama, Dothan, Alabama, Opelika, Alabama. Opelika, Alabama, interesting. Montgomery, Alabama, all over Akron, Ohio, my hometown, which is obnoxious. Opelika, Alabama, coincidentally, 30,000 people in Opelika, Alabama. I hope I'm saying that right, guys. If you're watching, let me know in the comments from Opelika. Also, the hometown of one Malik Autry. And I'm wondering if that might have something to do with it. Are they checking out Ohio State to see what we're saying about Malik Autry? Malik Autry, I'm pulling up this picture here for you guys. This is the Opelika school logo, the high school logo. Uh-oh. Malik Autry plays for these guys here with the block O. And Opelika is in the house. Watching Juck on Buck. So I know you guys are watching. I know you're watching from Alabama, from Georgia, from Oregon. And I just want to tell you guys, man, this is special when we're talking about J.J. Smith. This is something that we never get to see knowing ahead of time what it's going to be. I know it's a Buckeye, but just enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. This hype wasn't Ohio State created. We're just confirming it. It is all that. It is all it's cracked up to be. And we're potentially looking at a guy at 18 that we know is going to have a, barring injury, probably Hall of Fame NFL career. Like, that's just what it is. And we get to watch this career unfold, knowing that ahead of time. And I don't know that we've ever really been in this position when it comes to a wide receiver. There's just no doubt about it. This is what this guy is. And I have no problem saying that. I know some will find that ridiculous. I just have no problem saying it. But the type of hype about JJ and Carnell Tate, absolutely not comparable. And Tate is probably going to be a first-round caliber wide receiver. And when you're talking about a first-round caliber wide receiver and the hype for Jeremiah Smith not being anywhere close, it's just different, man. It's just so much different. And I cannot wait. And I'll tell you one other thing. The argument that we've had about who's going to have the best wide receiver room in the country, by the time Ohio State heads out to Oregon in week 7, and those are the two teams that debate is kind of between, there's no doubt on paper right now, I believe Oregon's is a better wide receiver room. But I think that by the time we get to that game, there's not going to be anybody else that is saying Oregon is the better wide receiver room once this kid gets a couple of games under his belt and once we see how dominant he really is. And let's not forget, when he shows how dominant he is, that is only going to help Carnell Tate. That is only going to help Emeka. That's only going to help the tight ends. Everything looks better. He's that dude. He really is that dude. All right, so some big news tomorrow, Thursday, 3:30. We are going to go live, and we're talking Jarquez Carter. Jarquez Carter will announce his decision at 4 o'clock on Thursday. Jarquez Carter, a guy that we have totally slept on for the most part here at Juck on Bucks. To be honest, listen, he's a low-rated 4-star, and it didn't look like we were really pursuing him too hard, or even like we would really take him for quite a while. Until recently, it's been confirmed by the guys who talk to the guys in the program that yes, in fact, we will take him. He's definitely a take. And if he comes aboard, he joins Trajan Odom, who I think has a really high ceiling, and Max Roy, who I think has a really low floor. We're talking about those two dudes with Jarquez Carter, and you got yourself a pretty solid crew on the interior of that defensive line for the class of 2025. I love it. So I slept on this guy for a long time, and then I finally got around to watching him. He's an absolute dog. He is obviously, as you saw, a very low-rated 4-star. He's maybe 4 spots away from a 3-star. And he is that rated that low because he's only 6'2". He might not even be 6'2". And that, can hurt you. It can hurt you in a ranking. It can limit the things you can do on the field. But his film shows a guy who is an absolute dog. He does some things really great, an elite first step. He plays like a bat. I mean, the dude is a man possessed. He's nasty. He is incredibly strong. He wins most of his battles with his brute strength. He's going to need to learn how to work with his hands more. Great news is Larry Johnson is the perfect guy for that, maybe the best in the country at hand fighting. And I think this dude could be a heck of a playmaker, very similar in body and speed to Michael Hall Jr. And this would be a very big one. Now, not the pedigree of a guy like Malik Autry, who the Buckeyes will still continue to try to flip from Auburn, and bringing Jarquez Carter in, not going to discourage him one bit. Autry's a straight up one tech, and he's the best one in the country, in my opinion. Nobody's going to scare him away. Jakeem Stewart's just the dude. He's not concerned with anybody in anybody else's class. He walks in and he knows what he is. And it's a certainty that this isn't going to change that one bit either. Jarquez Carter adds some depth and a real guy who has some potential. I think he has a pretty high ceiling, and I want the guy. I want him big time. Let's watch a couple plays. Carter, and the first thing that'll pop out is the speed. You can see how fast he gets in the backfield. A lot of times he's running by the back or the quarterback because he's through there so fast. He shoots gaps incredibly quick, a pretty elite first step. But when he takes on blocks, it's just brute strength. I think he'll be a great addition. Look at that. Did you see that right there? The way he came out, man, That dude is elite quick. When you look at a guy like this and you compare that first step to a guy like Maxwell Roy, totally different. Maxwell Roy brings a lot to the table, but not like that. His schools he's interested in, UCF, Florida, Miami, Penn State, I believe, was on there. We don't really have a top 2. But most people think that it's Miami and Ohio State here. Oh, my. Look at him coming off the end. Watch this play. Carter coming off the end here in this next play. That pursuit backside, excellent. The speed is apparent. He's just dirty, man. He's nasty. There is one play when he's coming off the end. This one right here. Just look at that. You can see the speed. You can see the athleticism. And this is a guy who's not like super fit. I mean, he's nasty. Legit football player. Intense football player. Look at the strength. Did you see that? He stacks him, sheds him, makes the tackle. Throws dudes out of his way. That was some good handwork right there. Always in pursuit. Really, really intriguing player. And I think that with Larry Johnson, he could be a heck of a ball player. So we will meet Thursday at 3:30 right here. And he's going to announce live at 4. So we'll have some fun. We'll do our standard live show, and we'll chill out as long as we want to and talk all things Buckeye football, not just about Jarquez Carter, both before and after he announces. So join me tomorrow at 3:30 for that one. All right, guys, we got a ton of news to get to today, but before we do, I want to show you a couple of pictures from the games released that have come out in the last couple of days. I asked for some people to send me some clips on Gmail, JuckOnBucks at Gmail, if you got anything to send me, or on Twitter at JuckOnBucks. And some people did, including this smart aleck Oregon fan who somehow has Julian Sayin on Oregon's roster. I'm not quite so sure how that happens. I don't know how you do that. Maybe they made him, put him in the portal and then signed him, but that's not happening. That's for sure. We've got quite a few Buckeyes really, really balling out. J.J. Smith tweeted this out today, 19 receptions for 1,000 yards and 16 touchdowns, and it's not too far off. It just might happen. Devin Sanchez having a little fun whooping on Michigan. This view right here, this is just gorgeous. So these are the Buckeyes playing out at Autzen, and you can see it just looks so real, and it gives you the feel of what it's like to be in these stadiums to me. And the shape of this stadium, if any of the Oregon fans can explain to me why it's shaped like this, it's just so awkward. It's so unique. I really love it. I think it's great looking. I don't know what it is that contains the sound so good, but it sure does. A loud place, passionate fans, and I love the stadium. I think it's so cool. And this one sent out by Opelika, Alabama's own Malik Autry, playing for the Buckeyes. I don't know, guys. A couple of interesting tidbits. So in the game, when you are a player, I don't know, one of the modes, you get, it's very in-depth, and you get these texts from other players, and you have options of what to do. They ask you a question. For instance, I'll show you an example here. So this is a Georgia player, Gus McGee, and he sends to you, if you're playing the game, "Hey, man, are you free this weekend? My girl just broke up with me, and I need to spend some time with the boys. I'm pretty tore up about it." And you can agree, ask for her number, spend the week with your teammate, or decline. And I guess you build your player ranking through these kinds of things. Here's a Georgia player. "Hey, bro, we're all going to get blasted and drive 100 miles an hour through a school zone. Are you in?" Hell yeah. If the cops arrest us, the fans will blame them. I found that one to be pretty spot on. And SEC Media Days went down. And Kirby talked. and I'll get into that on the next show. But I want to get into this first. This just got tweeted out from Ken Carman. The way Ross Bjork sounded with us, it's that the Big Ten might not stay at 18 teams in the future, that if some programs can't hold up their end of the bargain, they're going to get cut from the conference. This is something I've been talking about for a while. You've got bottom feeders in the Big Ten, and this is the difference between the Big Ten and the SEC. Every team all the way down outside of Vanderbilt in the SEC tries their best to compete at football. In the Big Ten, we have bottom feeders who are now getting outrageous sums of money from the Big Ten, who do not invest in football and do not care about football. I think this is unbelievable news. I absolutely love it. I know some people will hate it. There are some traditionalists that love the old Big Ten teams being in the conference, that love the AAU status of the conference and what that represents. And I used to agree with that until Maryland and Nebraska and even Penn State came aboard. Like, that has been dead for me for so long. That geographic footprint of the old Big Ten, I loved it. I loved everything about it. It's been gone forever. And now you've got West Coast teams in the conference. That's all gone to me. Now this is strictly about football for me. And as a football conference, I don't want the Indianas of the world, the Purdues of the world on my schedule. Northwestern is investing now. Illinois just built a new big facility. They just went out and got a really big transfer portal player and starting a cornerback from Texas. They're investing now in their program. Northwestern is investing in their program. If you're not investing in trying to get better, like, I don't want to play you. I really don't. You're just a waste of space. You're taking the money off the backs of those programs that are investing in earning the money for the conference, making the conference valuable. And I don't know what you're using it on, but you're not using it on football. So I was very excited to hear Carmen said that about the Big Ten. I absolutely love it. And I really hope that those kind of words and talking like that are going to, I don't want these people to leave some of these teams. I want them to invest in football, and I want them to value football again. That's what I want. I have been so ready for Buckeye football for quite a while. And every year at about this time, I start to bounce back between super excited that the season is almost here and really irritated that the season is not here yet. And it doesn't help when I am following recruiting so close to kind of follow the highs and lows of every little bit of news that comes out about recruiting. And while I've always followed recruiting, I've never followed it quite as much as I have this year, just based on what I'm doing. I feel like I know this class of 2025. Like, I know not just Ohio State's every target that they've been after, everybody that they've got commits from, but I feel very knowledgeable about the Alabama class, the Oregon class, the Georgia class. And I don't know that if following recruiting like this is healthy for me, because the highs and the lows, I forget to look at perspective. And the perspective is, we know that this staff at Ohio State is going to close out on talent good enough every year that we're going to be able to compete with anybody in the country. So focusing on the whims of decisions that 17-year-olds who haven't even played their senior season yet are making, you know, their ups and downs, their tweets, their videos, probably not the healthiest thing for a guy like me. Maybe some of you might feel the same way. That said, I do a college football show, and, you know, when things happen, I got to talk about them. Superstar cornerback and number one player in the state of Alabama, Naeem Offord, has been the guy in this class who has been deemed to be the biggest flip risk. Maybe some people think TJ Alford might be there. I don't think that at all. But Naeem Offord from Alabama, when he committed to Ohio State, it kind of moved really fast. And generally, those are the type of guys that when you see a flip happen, you kind of can point back to when they committed and see that it did move fast. It maybe was a little unexpected. You look at a guy like Justin Scott, for instance, out of St. Ignatius in Illinois, not our St. Ignatius. We'll talk about that later. But Offord, the number 2 cornerback in the country, after he committed, took a visit to Oregon, spent some time on the Alabama campus a couple of weeks ago. He just got done with an official visit at Auburn, and things are coming out. People are getting nervous. Hugh Freeze, by the way, in an article I just read, Offord quoted Hugh Freeze as saying that he's making him feel like a big priority at Auburn, letting him know, he's one of the top 10 guys that he's after, which is it's a great pitch, Hugh. Let the number 1 guy in the state know that he's one of the top 10 guys. Here's a video that was posted by one of the Bammers.
Look, everybody tell y'all to flip. Got 700 people on there. Look, everybody tell y'all to flip.
Everybody tell you to flip. So people are worked up. And then a recruiting analyst has been misquoted, and this is flying around everywhere. According to a report by Christian Clement of 247 Sports, 5-star corner Naeem Offord is considering decommitting. He's interested in visiting and considering both Auburn and Oregon. While it's not a guarantee that he'll leave Ohio State, the possibility is seemingly more and more likely. Now, in that same article, which I read from that fellow there, Offord also says it's going to be tough. It's going to be super tough. I'm locked in with Ohio State. There's a couple of schools that are coming at me even harder. Auburn, Oregon, still in there somewhat. And when he says still in there, people are reading into that to mean still in the race to sign him. I think they were taken out of context, those words. I think what he really means is still in there in the group of schools that are still coming after him. And of course they should. He's from Alabama. If that was an Ohio dude, we would want Ohio State to continue to pursue him all the way to the end. But the Auburn thing is out. No disrespect to Auburn. They're not in the conversation here when we're talking about Alabama and Ohio State and Oregon. They've tried to make a big money offer. The Offords are not interested. And I have firsthand knowledge as of 3 weeks ago that they're not interested in Alabama. And I'm 90% sure that if he does flip, it will not be Alabama. So if it's not Alabama and it's not Auburn, that leaves Oregon. Now, I am doing this show Wednesday at 3:35 p.m. At 7 p.m. tonight, DJ Pickett makes his decision. That decision most likely is between Oregon and Miami. DJ Pickett, you can kind of put in the category with Devin Sanchez and Naeem Offord as the 3 best corners in this class. And we know that Oregon already has Dorian Brew and Brandon Finney to play corner in that class. Many folks think that Pickett is leaning Oregon. We'll know soon. That would pair him, obviously, with Dorian Brew as the 2 5-star awesome cornerbacks in that class. And if that happens, if Pickett chooses Oregon, now Oregon is in the same position that we are currently in when we were trying to land Dorian Brew with 2 5-star cornerbacks. And if that's the case, Naeem Offord would be leaving Ohio State, where he is set up with another lockdown corner right across from him, and a coach that he is, the way he feels about Tim Walton, he can't disguise. I mean, obviously he says it, but you can just see it when he's around him, when he talks about him. He reveres Tim Walton. So if Pickett chooses Oregon, I think they're totally out. I think that Auburn and Alabama are out. I don't think it's happening. I'm very confident in it. And if I'm wrong in the end, I'll be wrong in the end. But Naeem Offord, to me, I'm not worried about it at all. I really am not. I think this is a case of a dude who is enjoying his summer. perhaps making a couple NIL bucks, taking some visits. I do think he likes these other schools, but I think he likes Ohio State the most. I think he's solid in his commitment. I think he's just having fun this summer. That's it. That's all. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm not worried about it. Not one bit. There are some guys on this staff that I trust implicitly, and Tim Walton has now earned that kind of trust. I don't think he's going to let it happen. Definitely not based on anything like lack of effort or lack of making the right move or lack of feeling what a kid needs, which is the most important thing in recruiting. Each kid's different. You got to feel what it is they need. Just like when you're a coach or a boss or a leader, you motivate everyone differently. Some need a kick in the butt. Some need a hug. In recruiting, it's the same thing. Each kid wants something different. You got to be that guy for them. I think Tim Walton has earned the trust that he's going to be that guy. And somebody else has not. And we'll get to that in a second. But before we do, how about a little feel-good stuff? Jim Tressel has started a podcast, and I'm sure some of you have caught it. And he had Marcus Freeman on the other day. Marcus Freeman, of course, Notre Dame's head coach, former Buckeye, Wayne High School, said some stuff that irritated a lot of Buckeye fans when he first took over at Notre Dame. Maybe something to the effect of he made the right decision this time in choosing Notre Dame. Notre Dame was a finalist for him coming out of high school when he chose Ohio State. But he says in here that he always knew he was going to go to Ohio State. His dad is from Columbus. And, that kind of irritated a lot of people, myself included, those comments. He did come out and try to clarify them. I think he meant exactly what he said in the first place. Actually, I don't know that he meant it, but he knew what he was doing, playing to the Notre Dame faithful when he said it, and I didn't appreciate it. It kind of upset me, to be honest. Anyway, he joins Coach on the podcast, and they start off the podcast. Coach's got a binder in front of him, and he's asking Marcus about Marcus's senior speech in 2008 at Ohio State when he was a senior. And for this senior speech, Trestle would give them 3 topics, 3 kind of questions that he wanted them to hit on in their senior speech. And I'm going to play this clip for you here.
On the first 2. So do you remember, so this was in August of 2008, okay, who your hero or your winner would have been?
I'm guessing it's my parents.
But I think we might have held you to 1.
My mom.
Your mom. Okay.
That's right.
And so here's what I wrote down as why you thought your mom was your hero. She said, Marcus said, I watched my mom work 2 jobs, and I also learned from her that it's family first. Right?
Yep.
And then you talked about the fact that the real issue that our guys should think about is their faith. That, it's bigger than football. It's bigger than national championships. And you talked a little bit about why you thought that was important. To me, that's the best introduction team to this guy. Is it's about his faith and it's about his family.
I love it when he looks at the camera and calls us team. I cannot get enough of this. If this thing went 30 hours, I might watch it straight through. I could listen to that man's voice forever. But that clip in particular, I think encapsulates so much about Jim Tressel. Not only did he have his seniors give this speech, but took the time to write out the topics that he wanted to hear them hit on in that speech. He sat down and took notes of their answers, all of them. And then in 2024, was able to go and pull it up and read it back. And I think that's, number one, the most Jim Tressel thing ever, that he could go do that. I have an AirTag on my wallet and he's pulling up comments of his own notes about Marcus Freeman in 2008. I'm so impressed by that. I revere this guy so much. Like, it's not even admiration, it's reverence. And it's almost unparalleled in my life outside of my family. Like, I just love the guy. I just absolutely love him. And I would encourage anybody who loves the Buckeyes, and maybe some of our younger listeners who've not heard a lot of Jim Tressel talk, to just watch that. He is one of the best speakers that you've ever heard in your life. And one of the things he hit on in that podcast was a really interesting topic for a lot of us when it happened. And that was the 2008 team. The 2008 team, Marcus Freeman returns for his senior year, along with a pile of studs, Alex Boone, Malcolm Jenkins, James Laurinaitis. Todd Beckman was the quarterback of that team. And that was Terrell Pryor's freshman year. Terrell Pryor, without a doubt, the biggest recruitment we've ever had. And that recruiting win was just enormous. And early in that season, we went out to USC and got flat out whooped and outclassed in every single area. And it was certain that we were not going to get back to the national championship. It didn't help that we did not have the best running back in college football for that game, Beanie Wells. I believe that was a foot injury, and I think that was the first of many foot injuries for Beanie. And if he hadn't had those, I think that he would have been one of the better running backs in the NFL for quite a bit longer. I think Beanie was so special, man. So special. And I'm not just saying that because he's a fellow Akronite. Anyway, the decision after that Tressel had was, do I stick with Todd Beckman and respect these seniors who came back to try to win the national championship, or do I turn the page and get this phenom freshman who I know is going to help our team potentially get to the national championship in the next couple of years, get him reps now, get him going? Because this season, as far as our ultimate goal of a national championship, is cooked. We're not going to get there. That's a heavy decision, man. That's a heavy decision. These guys who've been in your program for a long time came back, and you're going to bench one of their dudes, Todd Beckman. That's one of their guys. Those are superstars that could have gone to the NFL. They all came back. And he said this was the hardest decision that he ever made as a coach. And he takes us through the conversation that he had with Todd Beckman. And I think it was just unbelievable to listen to. If you can recall back to that period in time as a Buckeye fan, what you were thinking. I know what I was thinking. I wanted to see the kid. I was at intentionally the first game against Youngstown State, and he came in and took his first snaps. And I just remember thinking, okay, I did it. Check that box. I saw the first ever snaps of the guy I thought was going to lead us to maybe a couple national championships. And that was a box I wanted to check. And I made sure that I got it done. Youngstown State was the opponent. And man, oh man, did he look every bit the part as an 18-year-old freshman at Ohio State. And his career in legacy, I could do a whole episode on its own. Matter of fact, maybe I will, because it's so complicated. It really is a complicated legacy that I think at this point in time, there's still kind of a wound that ought to be fixed and repaired. All right, on to some comments. Kind of confused, Chuck. I thought with our NIL resources, if we wanted a guy, then money wasn't going to be a problem. With that said, I'm to take it we really don't want them guys bad enough if we're not going to put out the best NIL package. Couple things there. There's only going to be so many guys a cycle. Yes, we can go one guy toe-to-toe with anybody, but we got to pick and choose where we go. We can't go head-to-head with Tennessee for David Sanders, Oregon for Trey McNutt, Oregon for Dorian Brew, Oregon for DeCorian Moore. Boy, I'm sensing a theme here. Alabama for Justin Hill. We can't go toe-to-toe with everybody for everyone we want. We got to pick and choose. There's a budget now. And they're doing it in a really smart way. The fact that they did not go after DeCorian Moore with a max deal this year because they knew that the wide receiver room, they're banking on Chris Henry next year with Jeremiah Smith this year, and it's better suited to get a bunch of guys who are, well, not a bunch of guys who are developmental guys. You got Quincy in there, but outside of Quincy, you know, we're looking at guys who've got really high potential ceilings in Des Jones and BP Miller, who are at different levels in their development. Des is almost there, probably a very underrated guy. And BP, you can work with him for 3-4 years, no risk of him transferring out. If you go pay DeCorian Moore a ton of money, that's less money that you have to play with for David Sanders or potentially flip Malik Autry, Jakeem Stewart. You got to pick and choose your battles. So while we do have the money to go toe-to-toe with everyone, we're not going to do that for a Dorian Brew, who, while if you did not have Devin and Naeem in the class, you would have gone really high. You might have gone toe-to-toe with anybody to try to get Dorian Brew in. When you have two polished corners who are number 1 and 2 in the country, you're not going to shell that money out for that guy when someone else has prioritized him as number 1, which means they're going max deal. You can't go max deal on corner number 3. Doesn't mean you don't want him as much. I mean, it kind of does, but only because of the circumstances, not because of the player. And that's kind of how they got to do it. That's how most guys are going to do it at the top. There's really only one school right now that is going max deal on everyone. And, you know, that's just what it is. I don't think that's going to last over the course of time, but it's pretty clear that's what's going on this cycle for Oregon. And credit to them. They're closing the deals as well. You've got to close. It's not just money. You've got to be good recruiters as well. You've got to sell your program. And they're doing a great job at that, with then, in addition, the money to go head-to-head, max deal for every single guy they want. And that's dangerous. We simply can't do that. Georgia can't do that. Texas can't even do that. Texas A&M can't do that. They're the only ones that can do that. So everybody else is going to have to pick and choose based on needs in the roster and based on position. Obviously, left tackle, David Sanders, you're going to go max deal every single chance you get to get in on one of those top guys. Every time. Quarterback, same thing. Cornerback, same thing. And wide receiver, they're only going to do that if it's a guy that is super, super rare. JJ, Chris Henry, they'll go all in on Chris next year if they have to, just like they did with JJ. All in. No doubt about it. I don't even think they would go all in on DeCorian Moore if Chris Henry wasn't coming up the pipe. Because while DeCorian Moore is pretty amazing, he's not top flight. He's not rare. He would not be a number 1 wide receiver in most classes, I don't think. But that's just my opinion on that. Philly Brown always says, our 5 stars don't look like their 5 stars, referring to Ohio State versus the South. And the fact that Reese Stocksdale and Lorenzo Styles are the 2 best athletes really kind of backs that up. All right. So I've heard this for years, and I got to tell you, respectfully, I disagree with Philly. Love Philly, and this is a common theme, and it's a common refrain. So let's go through our 5 stars. I've written down all the guys who came out of high school as 5 stars that came to Ohio State. Donovan Jackson, Travion Henderson. Matter of fact, let's go one by one, and let's ask us the question. Of these 5 stars, for one, we know that number 1, every single one of these guys was highly coveted by schools in the South. Donovan, he's from Texas. Southern schools all wanted him. 5-star, came to Ohio State. And yes, he definitely looks like their 5 stars. Travian Henderson, absolutely one of the fastest backs in college football, has been his entire career, and absolutely looks like a total stud, a total unit. JJ, I mean, no need to even have that conversation. Emeka was the number 1 receiver in the class. Obviously, yes, he looks like they're 5 stars. G. Scott, tight end or wide receiver from Washington, right? Was a 5-star wide receiver from the state of Washington. So I don't believe was being really heavily recruited by Southern schools, but he certainly looked the part, as evidenced by how much weight he's been able to put on. Julian Sayin, obviously he signed with Alabama. Carnell Tate, most certainly recruited heavily in the South, as was Brandon Innes, and both look like any SEC wide receiver you'd see. On defense, Jack Sawyer and JT were 2 top 5 guys in the country. Definitely look like, you don't see many guys like Jack in the South at defensive end. He's kind of a rare, he kind of looks like a Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State kind of guy. He just does. But they certainly wanted him. Everybody wanted him. It was apparent that there was no way to get him out of Ohio. And because of that, I don't know how far it got with anybody, but certainly everybody would have wanted him. JT, we obviously know everybody wanted him, including all the Southern schools. Edric Houston almost went to Alabama. Certainly looks like they're 5 stars. Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks. Sonny, the number 1 safety in the country. CJ, the number 2 linebacker in the country, coming out, both 5 stars. Yes, absolutely. They look like anybody in the South. Caleb Downs. Yes, Caleb obviously went to Alabama. The point I'm making here is, yes, all of those guys look like they're 5 stars, and they down south wanted all of these guys. Everybody wants a 5-star player who is a legit 5-star guy, and all those guys are. What people are saying, and they're getting confused when they say that statement, they're talking about the guys that we don't get. And those guys are the bigs on the defensive line. When you say our 5 stars don't look like their 5 stars, what you're saying is we don't land the huge, nasty defensive linemen. We just don't. They're not from up here. They very rarely come up here. And that is why Malik Autry is so enticing as a prospect for us and why we've been drooling over him. We don't get those mammoth 1-techs in the middle. Jakeem Stewart, another guy. While, Jakeem Stewart is a very rare prospect. That's not some guy. You don't see a guy like that often. But that's a dude who is absolutely different looking than most. And if he ends up signing at LSU and you say, yeah, our defensive ends don't look like him, that's going to be true. But he's one of one. When you look at guys at linebacker, there are definitely some guys who have played at Georgia recently who have looked a little different than CJ and Sonny. That's just their body type. But I just believe this entire argument is just totally based on one position and one position only. And it's the big nasties in the middle. Our stud corners right now on the roster, I don't believe we have any 5 stars on the roster that are cornerbacks. But, we've certainly had the best cornerbacks in the country over a period of time. In fact, I got a stat for you here. Now, this came out on Deej Sports, and this dude runs some serious stats. And he's got Ohio State as wide receiver U and DBU over LSU in both categories. A lot of people push back on that. Several Michigan fans, obviously. So he backs it up. Since 2000, Ohio State DBs in the NFL, first in interceptions, first in passes defended, first in forced fumbles, first in tackles, first in TFLs, first in pick sixes, first in games started. Ohio State wide receivers, first in yards, first in touchdowns and first in receptions. And he ends that where you cannot see, no, I'm not an Ohio State fan, which he's not. So Ohio State's secondary, whether they look like them or not, they're number one in the country. Wide receivers, number one in the country. Do they look like theirs? I don't know, man. You guys tell me. I don't know, man. I rest my case. This is all about one position. And if we had Justin Scott on the line, who, by the way, from the North, should have landed him, but Miami swooped in and got him, we'd have one of those big monsters. We don't. We're trying to sign Jarquez Carter tomorrow. He's 6'2". Tyleek, Mike Hall. They're just not as big. We're really talking about a couple inches. That's the difference here. We're talking about a couple inches and 20 pounds. And until we can get a couple of guys like that, we're going to continue to hear this narrative. And I don't think Reese Stocksdale and Lorenzo Styles being excellent athletes across those categories illustrates that point. Because if we look at those guys' times individually, when we look at Sonny's broad jump, when we look at the max speed, I think Ballard is probably one of the fastest guys in all of college football. The fact that those guys are versatile enough to get on all those different boards just shows they're incredibly versatile athletes. The dudes that are on those boards, those times are all crazy, and those measurables are excellent. And they would match up with anybody else in those individual categories. As far as versatility, a lot of those guys made it onto 3 different boards. You know, some of those tests are geared towards position. So, yeah, I'm just not with the argument. And I think it's all about the big nasties in the middle. Ducks are pretenders. They might win 7 or 8 games, says Michael Cavill. Michael, you're in for a rude awakening. Brandon the Duck says, as a new member of the Big Ten, people are sleeping on Penn State. I think the Oregon-Ohio State rematch in the championship game is getting way ahead of itself. Penn State's schedule pans out for them very nicely. They could backdoor very easily into the championship game. Let's have a look. All right, Penn State. They open up at West Virginia. That's a pretty tough game. Then they got Bowling Green, Kent State, 2 MAC opponents they'll win easily. They got Illinois at home. Really not the easiest game. Illinois is really getting better. UCLA at home. Then they go out to USC. That's a dangerous game for them. Then they go at Wisconsin. I think that's another dangerous game for them. Then they got Ohio State and Washington at home. At Purdue, Minnesota, and let me pull down this doggone banner. And they end the season, Maryland at home. So we're talking dangerous games. West Virginia, USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Washington. I don't know, man. They're obviously going to be favored in all of those games outside of Ohio State. But there's definitely some dangerous games there. And if there's one thing we know as not new members, it's that James Franklin will find a way to let you down. But I do think that that they got a chance, really. Obviously, they're going to be favored in all those games, but Ohio State. And for some reason, and I think it's just because I genuinely like the player, I believe in Drew Aller. I really do. He's not shown us anything much in college that has made us believe in him like that, but I just believe in him. I like him, man. I like him a lot. AJC, our dude, OG, Juck rocking the dad shoes. I got some NBs too. Making fun of Juck's New Balances. Listen, making fun of my New Balances. I only wear New Balance and Hoka. That's it. New Balance and Hoka because I've got wide feet. and it's hard to find wide sizes. So, you know, it is what it is. When you get older, your feet hurt a lot. Well, I had respect for this channel till I saw Ole Miss instead of Alabama and Boise State. Ernest, bro. It's just a prediction. It's just a prediction for the playoffs. But I'll have you know that the SEC odds, Georgia, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama. Mississippi over Alabama. I'm not going out on a limb here. I'm going chalky. I don't know what to tell you. However, if I had to do that again, I might change my mind, but you can't change now. This is not a crystal ball pick. You make your prediction, you stand on your business. You know what I'm saying? I chose Ole Miss. And many apologies to our new Ohio State buddies. There are new Alabama buddies who are watching the show. I did choose Ole Miss over you guys, and I'm kind of regretting it. We'll see what happens. Some of you have asked for a couple of things. Now, I work on the show long hours, to be quite honest, and I love the show. I absolutely love what I'm doing. I started this with small goals, and every time I met one of those small goals, I would set a new goal. And with each of those successive goals, I would work harder. And how did that pop up? That's bad news. So, guys, now that that's popped up, we might as well just address it. This is a beast of a lineman that is about to sign at Georgia. And I'm going to explain to you where I'm going to talk more about the Ohio State offensive line, the situation, the Will Conroy situation, in a second here. With each of those successive goals, I have set a new goal for the show and worked harder to get to that next goal. The process is always 100% focused on making the very best show I can. There is no ancillary nonsense. I'm not grinding for sponsorships. I am simply putting all my effort into reading, researching, show notes ahead of time, editing in the end, and trying to make the most complete show I can with absolutely no experience. And we've done really well. But, you know, this is not my full-time gig. However, I know that a lot of you really like the show, and I am so incredibly flattered by that and appreciative of that, because this is what I love to do. I just really do. And the next goal is going to require a little bit more help. Obviously, you've helped me tremendously to get to this point, but I want to be able to do more of this. And to do more of this, if you're someone who likes the show and you want to be a part of the growth of the show and you want to see it succeed, 55% of the folks that watch the show are not subscribed. If you could subscribe, that would be a huge benefit right off the rip. If we could get that even up to 65% subscribed, that would be an amazing boost. The bigger the platform, the more desirable it is for sponsorships and things of that nature. It would also help a tremendous amount. And I'm guilty of it too. When I watch shows, I don't think about it. I don't hit the like button. At the same time, I get annoyed when people bring it up over and over again. So I don't bring it up much. But if you could make a conscious effort to do that, if you like the show, I don't want you to like it if you don't. That would be a tremendous help as well. At some point, I would like to ultimately be able to produce the show every day live in a consistent time slot. That time slot for me would be the morning time. So liking the show, subscribing to the show would be a tremendous help. Another way, I've created a new membership program that some of you have brought to my attention. I didn't really know about. You can add a whole lot of benefits in this. And you can make a lot of different tiers. I've just started it with one tier. One tier, flat rate, $5. And what's included in that is we're going to do members only live streams. We're going to do them often, because there's a whole lot of times I want to do things like that. But at the same time, it's usually about some news that's come out and I don't have a fully formed opinion. I kind of want to work through my opinion on a live stream, but I don't want to do it with the entire public. I want to do it with people that I know, basically are friendlies, so to speak, right? So we'll do a lot of those. You also know that, as of now, without doing the show live, I record the show the night before and release it in the morning. The morning is kind of my time slot. That's what I've found works the best for my audience, you guys. If you're a member, as soon as I upload that in the evening, that show's available to you. Also, priority response to all the comments and emails from members, 100%. And when I do the segment at the end of the show, I will use those viewer or those member comments first. When we put those on the show, I'll choose from those ones first. Follow me on social media. I'll follow you back. I encourage you to send me DMs of any Ohio State news you see or any college football news in general that you think might be interesting to put on the show. I've felt from the very beginning of this thing like this was kind of a project that was a team project. many of you have rooted me on from the very beginning. And it just has felt to me like this is our thing. Diehard Buckeye fans. That's all we are here. And doing what we've been able to do so far, it's tremendous. And I'd like to continue doing it. It's something that I am falling in love with. It's something that I enjoy. And to be able to get to just the stage that we've gotten to now is, it's kind of a dream I never knew I had, to be honest. And I'm absolutely loving it. And I thank you all so much. Additionally, a lot of you have asked me for merchandise. Some of those companies that do this, they print on demand. So you put an order in for one of those shirts. It goes to them. They print it. They send it out to you and then they would give me, in this instance, a cut of the money. But those print on demands, they're not screen printed. They are pressing on basically a patch with a machine. And it feels like a chunk of plastic. It's just garbage. And I've been reluctant to do that because I don't want you to get some piece of junk. The only alternative is for me to buy a bunch of screen printed, nice stuff, mail it out myself, and I simply don't have the capacity to do that. Now, the good news is we've got a remedy. As yesterday, I had a long meeting, and Chuck on Bucks now has an official sponsor. And that official sponsor of the show is Columbus Apparel Company. Columbus Apparel Company is a family-owned Columbus business. Their stuff is awesome. They've got an amazing logo. But the best part is they got a whole line of Chuck on Bucks merchandise coming. And when they're all done, all you'll have to do is go to Columbus Apparel Company, and amongst their Blue Jacket stuff and Columbus Crew stuff, there's going to be the Chuck on Bucks line. So you can go get it all yourself there. 100% screen printed stuff. It's going to be excellent. They're even designing a Buckeyes shirt, which means that you won't have to do it yourself anymore, which our girl did. Doreen's new tat, absolutely awesome. You can see the eye is the instrument for the band, daughter in the band, and the new shirt, which is so cool. But you won't have to do it yourself anymore. It'll be at Columbus Apparel Company, and we thank them for wanting to be part of the show. So anyway, that's my spiel. I appreciate you all so much, and thank you so much for helping us get to this point. Now, the Will Conroy stuff, guys, I'm going to get into, but we're at an hour and 20 minutes, and that's a long segment, so I'm going to have to save that for tomorrow's show. Please remember to join me tomorrow at 3:30 for the live show, as we will cover Jarquez Carter's decision and shoot the breeze about whatever comes to our mind. Please check out the show in podcast form. Please subscribe. And if you're interested in the new membership program, check that video out that I'm making for that right after this one. And I'm going to upload it to there, and it'll explain everything a little more in detail. And I appreciate you guys so much. Please like the video on your way out, and I'll talk to you soon. Chuck on Bucks out.